Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Strip by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am Steph Sia, aka Kimchi, your host for the show, your all-time host. Season 2 is now, which is exciting. And I know I've been doing a lot of guests lately that are international, from Singapore, I'm doing some from the Philippines, even some in Toronto. But we're going to go back to our roots here, and we're going to go back to another, well, now she is based in Vancouver, dancer that has come all the way from Ontario, has an incredible story to share with us today. Because we're talking about a really important topic, which is the big decision in terms of, should I come out to my coworkers or colleagues? So it is very, very risky. There's pros and cons. We're going to go deep into that today. We're going to do a big deep dive. But without further ado, I really wanted to introduce Caitlyn, aka Tiffany Heart, to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, no problem. Anytime, girl. I'm so excited to hear back from you. So basically, Caitlyn / Tiffany, whatever you want to call her, she's a lovely girl. She's actually one of my former students at the pole studio that I teach at. And she was so lovely. I remember like when you came in, I was like, who is this like tiny little girl, this tiny dancer? That was like last summer, I think, or maybe 2 summers ago.
Yeah, last summer is when I moved to Vancouver.
Yeah.
So for anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Caitlyn Marie, or my stage name is also Tiffany Heart or Tiffany of Hearts, depending where I'm at. I have traveled from Ontario as my home base, and now I am residing here in Vancouver, BC.
Awesome. And great choice to move here, by the way.
Fantastic choice.
So you are a fellow not stage dancer, you are a fellow VIP dancer at a club here in Vancouver. You have an incredible story that I did not know of. So it was really cool when you reached out to me on Instagram, you slid into the DMs and were like, hey, I have an episode. Potential idea for an episode. I really want to share my story on this. And yeah, we're all going to be talking about like coming out to your coworkers because you have a civilian job, which like you are super skilled. So wait, tell the audience who you are, what you do in terms of sex work, and also the other 2 fucking cool jobs that you have as well.
So I am a VIP dancer or stripper. I also accept exotic dancer as well. I find that a lot of people have different names for different things. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty much all in the same category. That is my one job. My other 2 civilian jobs is I teach prenatal yoga, and I also am an electrician. So what? I was in the trades first, and the trades is what introduced me into the dancing world.
Whoa, okay. I don't know all the details. I know you gave me a really, 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 really brief outline in your message, so I cannot wait to get into all the dirty details. But I just want to say thank you so much for reaching out and like pitching your episode to me. That's so cool of you to do that, and also really makes my job easier just because, and I'm just throwing this out there, if you do want to be a guest on the show, feel free to DM me. I always respond to all messages, but pitch me. Please, please, please pitch me your episode. I'm getting a lot of requests now to be on the show, but like if you just be like, I'm a stripper and I want to be on your show, it doesn't really work like that. Like I really want you guys, if you want an episode on you, like everything is highly created. I invite people onto my show because I feel like they would be a good fit in terms of they could offer a different angle and offer a different perspective. So if you can do that and you could pitch me, please do. But please stop with the messages and saying like, I want to be on your show. Give me a reason why you want to be on my show, please. But anyways, continue with the story, or actually start the story because we haven't got into it yet. So why don't we start chronologically in terms of like where your roots are, Ontario, all that stuff, and go.
All right. So I started in Ontario back in 2016 is when I first started, October of 2016.
Okay.
I was an electrician for about 2 years. And I was working with a group of boys. One of them was my superior boss, and it was coming to Christmas time when usually most companies do layoffs due to the fact that there isn't enough work. Normally they call you back. Being a girl in a male-dominant industry, I had that feeling where I knew I was going to get laid off and I wasn't going to have a job when I came back after Christmas.
Okay.
So I was talking with the guys about it, and one of the members that I worked with said, why don't you go to work with my wife? And she works at a local bar in town. So I asked a couple questions. He invited me over, introduced me to his wife named Angela, and she uses her real name as her dancer name.
Cool.
And so we went over there for dinner. She chit-chatted. She's been a dancer for 20 years from England. Came over here when working visas were a thing for exotic dancers.
Wow. A long time
Met
ago.
her husband, and they've been married in Canada ever since. So, lost my job. I contemplated on the topic. I asked a ton of questions since I've never even been into a strip club. That was the first time I've ever worn heels. And maybe gazelle on stilts, that was for sure. So I told her I'd get back to her. I wasn't fully made my decision whether I wanted to get into dancing or not. And
Right.
I also said I asked questions about shooter girls, since in Ontario there's girls that sell trays of shots and they make a percentage per shot that they sell.
Right.
So I was contemplating all of that. She was giving me the different types of money that you can make and stuff. After 2 weeks, and I was at the point of pretty much, I was like, okay, I'm basically just living off of my savings and I'm not going to be able to pay many more bills after this. Let's go give it a shot. So she gave me a couple of her outfits to borrow for my first night. And I went and bought my first pair of pleasures.
Yes. Welcome to the club.
And, she threw me in on a Saturday night. We went to work together. She talked to the manager of the club, and that was it. So I came down the stairs Saturday night. Club's packed, 9 p.m. In Ontario, clubs are open until 4 a.m.
Wow.
So they stopped serving alcohol at 2, but you can keep giving VIP dances until 3:45.
That's amazing.
And at 4 p.m., they close. So it's a late night.
Yeah. Super long. Wow.
Super long.
Oh my God.
Went in at 8 p.m., finished at 4, and I can honestly say I made $200, and it was the scariest night of my life because they have a huge staircase to come down the stairs from the dressing room down to the dance floor. Learning how to walk in heels for your first time, I should have tested them out before I came to work.
Oh no.
I'm gripping the railing, trying to walk down, shaking from my nerves. Got kind of hung around her for a little bit, and she showed me how she talked to customers, introduced me, and I had my first client. Brought him to the VIP room, and I sat down. We were waiting for the first song to start. We started chit-chatting. I said, this is my first dance I've ever given.
Oh my God.
Him being as confident as possible was like, it can't go wrong.
Oh no.
It absolutely can.
Oh no, what
dance
happened?
got done. I saw his face. It was just, I didn't know how to move my body gracefully.
No.
So it was very stagnant movement. And the dance got done. And I looked at his face and I saw how disappointed he was. And I was like, you know what? I'll give you another one and we can do a 2-for-1 deal. My nickname was 2-for-1 for at least the first year of my career.
Oh my God. Oh man, that is a good story.
He came back. That was the best part. Was the night I met him. He was on a Christmas work party with all of him and his coworkers, and they came back the following year and all remembered me. Obviously, when they came back, I was a lot more experienced in a year, and I gave way better lap dances. So that was it. Showed I improved.
Showed you improved, yes.
So after my first night, she asked me on the drive home how I felt and everything.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it, and we went over a discussion on kind of the different types of girls that are in the club. She's like, she's been working for 20 years in the industry, and she kind of sat down and said, here's all the different scenarios. You pick what makes you feel comfortable and go with that. So I went home afterwards, and I was still up in the air. I was like, is this for me? Is this not for me? It was a lot of work. Your feet hurt at the end of the night. You're talking all night, and I give props to girls that do it every single day. And so I told her, I was like, you know what, I'll let you know next week if I want to come back in. I kind of need to take some time for myself and make a list. So I sat down, did some research online, and felt that for me personally, when I go in there, I want to be completely sober and be able to know my surroundings. So I chose to make a promise to myself that I'd never drink, never do drugs, and I wouldn't drink or do anything before I went to work.
Wow, good for you.
And I kind of sat down also and was like, well, it's scary. How do I get over my nerves? Well, I wear contacts and glasses. I can still see pretty up close. I can't see super far away. So I did the decision of I'll take off my contacts. So when we do small stage show performances to show ourselves and stuff, this is how I'd work it out. Right. And it made me a little less scared for the first couple months until I gained that confidence in myself to be able to put my contacts in and fully see everything.
Yeah.
It's just a way of blurring it.
That's really interesting. Like literally blurring it. Yeah. Literally.
So I did that for a couple months and got back into the trade when I found another job, since that was my one passion, was to be a licensed electrician eventually.
Right, right.
And after a couple weeks of being in my civilian job, I missed dancing. So I contacted Angela again. I was like, is there a way that I can do both at the same time without physically exhausting myself?
Right.
So she told me to talk to the club owner in Ontario. Different clubs have different rules all across Canada.
Right.
I'll talk about that later too.
Yes, for sure.
So she says you just have to talk to the manager and ask pretty much what his rules are. Since she was a full-time dancer, she worked 5 days a week, and that was no issue. They're open 7 days a week at my home club when I was working in Ontario, actually Cheetahs of Windsor.
Okay, and cool.
So I was there, and Pat was pretty understanding, was the manager. He's like, you know what? I understand that what you're doing. He's like, I'm happy that you're here. You're a good worker. He's just contact me a week before, give me the days that you're going to work the next week following, and we'll go with the flow. So nice. At the time, I was working Tuesday nights because he just asked me to do one weekday slow shift.
Yeah.
So I was doing Tuesday nights from 9 p.m. till 2 a.m. He would let me go sometimes early around 1 a.m. just so I can get up for work the next day.
That's so nice.
I would do Fridays and Saturdays as well.
Right.
Big days for dancers are usually the weekends, which are Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. Sundays are always that extra bonus day if there's any sporting events going on. So I'd try and push myself to do as much as I could, and did that for about 2 more years.
Okay.
In 2018, I decided to leave the trade. It was somewhat my decision, somewhat the company's decision.
Okay.
I guess I'll backtrack a little bit more. So in 2016, when I started, I think 2017 was the Canadian 150th, if I do believe so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I started in 2016. 2017, in the summer, I wanted to take some vacation time for myself while I was applying for a new company position, a different company, as a electrician, and I took 2 months off. I left the company I was currently with, and I said I was taking summer holidays. If there was an opening when I came back, I would reapply, and if not, I would try and find another job. They're completely understanding, and I left. I decided to travel across Canada for the Canadian 150th, and danced along the way, and was able to pursue my passion in both dancing and traveling.
Amazing.
And went to every single province and danced in all those provinces.
That's so cool.
I found BC and fell in love with Vancouver. I'm like, I'm going to live here one day. I love the vibration that Vancouver has to offer. I liked how liberal everything was.
Yes.
And so stayed here as long as I could. Ended up getting a call from a company I applied to and went back to Ontario to start.
Okay.
I worked for them for about 1.5 years. In April of 2018, they sat me down, and they basically said how they found out about my dancing career, and they asked me if I was continuing it while I was working at their company. Me being young and trying to be as truthful as possible, I said, yes, I work on the weekends, but what I do in my personal time shouldn't affect what I bring to the table as my position at my civilian job.
Absolutely.
They begged to differ. They were very one-sided on it. They wouldn't let me speak. And they decided to terminate my position due to the fact that I danced.
That's so fucked up.
I don't have any social media. That was another one of my criteria that I made for myself. I said, you know what, I'm trying to do two things at once.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make it as easy as possible. I said, I enjoy the nightlife, I enjoy the interaction and the sexuality that comes with everything that comes to exotic dancing, but I don't want to pull it into my civilian life and personal life outside of there. Let's keep
Right.
one side one thing, the other side the other thing.
Totally.
So
That's really smart too.
I asked them, I said, may I ask how you found out? They said that a couple of the guys from work were following me
What?
because they suspected something when I wouldn't go out for drinks with them after work as a crew and engage in like hanging out. And for me personally, I just think if I don't connect with you on certain views in life, I don't need to make friends with you if I work with you. I can be civil and I can have my own personal life.
Of course.
They apparently with that company that wasn't how it was, and I lost my job. I gained a reputation in the lower area of Ontario of being the electrician that was also an exotic dancer. So while I was trying to apply for jobs, I was having a really hard time.
Oh,
And I
wow.
made the decision to leave the trade for a couple of years. And I said, you know what? Let's dance. Let's work full time, make some money, and do other passions that I wanted to pursue, travel. And I also really enjoyed yoga as a hobby.
Right.
And said, why don't I try teaching yoga, learning a little bit about it, and going from there. So
Wow.
I became the girl that worked 7 days a week. I was on rotation in Ontario. I would go from Windsor to Niagara Falls. Did
Okay.
a couple of clubs in Mississauga and Toronto. And every club is different. So I set it up where I would work Wednesday to Saturday in Windsor at my home club.
Okay.
I would take Sunday and wake up at pretty much after working until 4 a.m., getting home at 5. I'd wake up at 8, leave my house by 9, and drive to Niagara Falls.
Wow.
Be there for 12 o'clock when the club opened, and there they were 12 noon till 2 a.m. So I do a double, which was a day and night shift on Sunday.
Oh my
Do
gosh.
a day shift on Monday,
Oh
and
my
leave
God.
after my day shift at 8 p.m. to drive back to Windsor. Take
Girl.
Tuesday off and start
Wow.
all over.
Girl. I give you mad props for doing that. Holy crap. That is a schedule.
That was the
God.
schedule. And then I would also throw in 1 week out of every month, I would throw in taking my 5 days off at my home club and doing another strip club in Mississauga or Toronto just to kind of mix it up. I
Wow.
thought for me personally, it was a way of just seeing how other people interacted with customers, giving me a wider range to expand my clientele, as well as just you gain more tools by working with other girls in the industry.
Totally.
So you can see their experience and stuff.
Wow.
From there, I saved up enough money to travel, and I took some time off and went to Southeast Asia. Got my meditation certificate, and I was searching for answers. I was like, I want to move to Vancouver. I want to be a part of this. How do I do it? So I did it the most extreme way possible.
But of course.
And I was like, let's combine as much things as I possibly can do. And I went to go to a meditation retreat. I hiked Everest Base Camp in Nepal.
Wow.
And did some hiking around there. Went to India and Qatar.
Oh
And
my
when I
God.
came back, within a week, I sold everything I owned, talked to my club owners, thanked them for the time that they let me work and their flexibility with my schedule, packed up everything, and moved to Vancouver last year in June.
Who are you? Wow. That is the most incredible story.
Yeah, so when I moved here, I kept in touch with, I drove across the country a few times. One for the 150th. A couple times my best friend lives in Calgary, so I drive across to see her. Whenever I drove across, it's such a long drive from Ontario to the West Coast that I'd stop in each province and I'd work in a club for a night or two
Cool.
and keep going. So I kept
Wow.
my contacts, and I always made sure to be respectful of the managers, and they let me work while I was on the road to travel to move out here.
Amazing.
And I kept in touch with one of the managers from my favorite club in Vancouver. When I landed, I said, hey, I worked here so many months ago. I was wondering if there's space for me to be a VIP dancer. They just asked me to come in during a day shift to talk and go over a few things, and that's how I started. So I worked full time at a club here in downtown Vancouver for, I guess, until COVID started.
Yeah.
And once COVID started, I made the decision to, well, it was forced. Clubs closed,
Yep.
and I went back to my civilian job full time. But in the meantime, while I was working at the club in Vancouver, I was teaching yoga, working at a yoga studio, and being an electrician all at once.
Oh my gosh.
So it was a busy schedule. There was a lot of days where I was like, I'm craving some sleep and some personal time.
Yeah.
Having this time off with COVID really helped to see that I didn't have a balance with having friendships and relationships.
Okay.
So now it's been really nice to be able to make some new friends, take some time out for myself, and kind of focus on where I want to be and how to merge all my favorite aspects of different parts of my life into
Right.
one.
Yeah, because you have a lot of favorite aspects, it sounds like. which is really, really great. So wow. Oh my gosh. Like that is so cool, super inspiring. And I have so many questions.
Go for it.
Oh my gosh, where to start? Okay, so unfortunately, I mean, I just want to say like how sorry I am that you had to go through that with the job in Windsor with your civilian job, like to be treated like that. Is that even legal to be dismissed?
It's not legal, but
Yeah.
because there's a law that's passed. I think you spoke about it on another episode, on your bonus episode when you did your Florida State University interview. There's a law that's passed that doesn't really protect sex workers. So when I called into the labor board, we are not protected. So being the fact that I am a sex worker and holding a civilian job, they have the right to terminate me due to that job. And there is no way of protection.
Right.
So that's, I find, the reason why a lot of strippers or sex workers in any form of the industry that have a civilian job tend to keep it very hush-hush.
Right.
Is because when you do come out, there's that constant fear of, am I going to lose my job over this?
Right.
I think that a lot of people or folk that are in the sex working industry, they're not looking to disrespect the companies that they're working for in the daytime. They're just looking to be able to have two forms of lifestyles and support themselves in a way financially that they can live their life to however they wish to choose.
Right. That's really important to note that, just because like I also came from a similar background. I'm not a licensed electrician by any means, but I had a civilian job for several years, and then I was also moonlighting as a stage dancer as well in Vancouver. And like I was really open about it. I was always posting about it on my social media and stuff. That was all the choice that I wanted to do. But like it was always hovering over my head, like, are they going to find out about it? Like, how are they going to react? Like, and it's a really real and valid fear as well, because again, losing your job is pretty significant. It's not a fun time. I lost my jobs, plural, due to COVID. So I've been doing just content creation and sex work for the past few months, and it's like the struggle is real. So
It's real, and it's stressful too. So
super
it adds
stressful.
that stress into your sex working career, where when you're trying to perform, you have to be on your top game, and you need to be confident and fun and bubbly. And when you're stressed outside of your job, it puts a damper on it.
Yeah.
So I also find too that I never had a fear when I was doing both jobs before I got fired or in Ontario, was I never had a fear of being inside a strip club. I always felt safe when I was at the club. The bouncers, the management, all the rules that the staff put in place for strippers and exotic dancers made you feel comfortable.
Right.
It was the fear of the second you left those doors, what was going to happen in the outside world.
Right, because you're not protected anymore, basically.
That's exactly it. And I think that's why we need to open up this conversation and have discussions with civilian jobs and companies. It'd be amazing for them if they do find things out or they have questions to just sit you down and let's have a conversation about it. It's not taboo anymore. It's 2020.
Yeah.
And let's start a discussion.
Totally. And this is why you're on the this is why you're on the show, basically, because I thought it was such an important aspect. And it's a lot of like I had a lot of people be like, oh my gosh, how do you do that? And like a lot of the questions that came in were like, how do you do that? How can I be part of that club where it's accepted for what I do in my personal time? And it can be really, 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 really tricky. And you actually experienced both sides. So we're going to go into the positive side a little bit later. I just have a couple more questions here that came up. But like, so when you were driving across Canada, how did you get in touch with the clubs? Like, like, it was really cool that they were so flexible for you to come in, you know, as you were driving along through your like cross Canada trip. Like, did you just drop in? Did you email them beforehand and stuff too? Just in case people are wondering on how to do this themselves.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm not quite sure if the rules have changed. I did this a couple years ago, and well, last year too. But so I know clubs are different as the time goes on. What I did was working with a variety of people from all over Canada when I was dancing. I would just ask them what clubs they came from, where they worked at, what their experiences were with each club, why they liked it, and took mental notes and would write them down on my phone. From there, when I was planning to drive across Canada, I decided to do the West Coast tour before the East Coast tour.
Okay.
For people that don't know the geography of Canada, Ontario is central Canada, more towards the East Coast, but we are more central since the East Coast has New Brunswick, Nova Scotia,
right.
Newfoundland, Labrador, PEI. So I did some research before I left, looked at all the different clubs going towards British Columbia, and I emailed them. A lot of them don't email you back.
Right.
So then I made the decision of looking up the time zones, and I was calling while their times were open and asking to speak with a manager, saying I was a dancer from this club. I would have my manager contest that I was a good worker and all this stuff. I wanted to come in. What are your rules and guidelines for me to be able to come in temporarily, and how long would you like me to work for?
Right. That's really respectful too. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I was able to contact them that way. I would say Manitoba was the hardest.
Okay.
It got easier as I came out west. So Manitoba, I danced in Winnipeg, and the clubs out there was when I called them, they said, we have a lot of girls that say they're coming and don't show up. Give me your dates, and all we ask is that you work a minimum of 3 nights in a row. We don't care if it's the weekend or if it's the weekdays. Here's our set times. This is the time I open up and come in. These are the days I'm working. Please come in while I'm working as a manager. So he could talk to me. The other thing is being a VIP dancer and a floor worker, they want to see your physical physique to kind of see if you fit their look of their club.
Right.
So I came in during the day while they were cleaning the club, ready to open that night. Talked to him a little bit, told him about myself. I made the highly mistake of being too nice, being a Canadian, and I was like, hey, I brought coffee.
Oh, that's so nice. A little
more formal, and he's just like, we don't do this here.
Oh my God. Denied. Totally shut down.
So, he let me work. I did 3 nights in Manitoba. I found that I wasn't doing too well myself, as you are in the prairie provinces. They have a no contact rule. In Ontario, you are allowed to physically touch your clients. And when I mean that, you're not giving extras, which are hand jobs, blow jobs, all that stuff. That's not allowed in strip clubs. It is, you are allowed to physically grind and sit on someone's lap, touch their arm, their face, their neck, whatever. Just be a little more personable with your lap dances. So that was hard for me, as I feel that if I would have went from a no contact to a contact, it would have been easier.
Yeah, totally.
Going from contact to no contact, you were getting an extremely good thigh workout because you were hovering over someone.
Totally, I can attest to that.
And it was because the customers and clients that are in the club know that you're not getting the full experience of a contact dance, it's harder to convince them to, hey, let's go to the back room, get a VIP dance. They're like, no, we're just going to throw some money on stage
Right.
and prepare drinks and leave. A lot of times they would say, they would sit me down, because usually you have a conversation before you pop the question, and they would be like, you know what, we'll pay you for your time for sitting with us since you don't do stage shows, and thank you very much. So I did okay in Manitoba.
Yeah.
Saskatchewan surprisingly doesn't have any strip clubs.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I
None?
know, the Bible Belt of Canada. None.
Oh my God, crazy.
So
Wow.
I stopped in Regina, Saskatchewan, and just kind of checked out the nightlife that they had for a night, just curious, and moved on over to Alberta. In Alberta, they have licensing rules, so depending what city you're in.
Yes.
So in Calgary, you have to get a license to dance. It is the same way in bigger cities in Ontario. So
Okay.
in the Greater Toronto area, you have to go down to the police station. They do a background check. They also check you for drugs and alcohol at the time.
Okay.
And they take a picture, and you get a little plastic card that you have to provide to the clubs when you walk in and you want to work. It's your basically serial number for 1 year before it expires, saying that you're clean, you've had a background check by the RCMP, and you're good to go. So I brought that card from Ontario to Calgary, and on the phone, they asked me to get a Calgary card.
Right.
Well, it was hard for me to do that since I was only temporarily doing it. It takes a couple weeks to come in. In Ontario, you can get it all done in 1 day. It takes about 2 hours.
Oh my gosh.
In Alberta, it's a couple week process.
Right.
So I didn't have that since I was like, I'm only driving through and temporarily seeing things. Let's chance it. I talked to the managers in Calgary they have 4 clubs.
Yes.
And I talked to all of them. And basically I went in one by one the night that they opened, and on a Friday night, and I asked to speak with a manager up in their office. I showed them my card, and I asked for an exception. They said that they'd grant me exception, but they took a bigger percentage of my earnings. So clubs take a percentage of what you make. Every club's different. In Ontario, in Windsor, they call it a bar fee.
Okay.
You pay $100 to work for the night. You pay it up front, and anything you make after that is yours.
Okay.
In Niagara Falls, it depends what hour you come into work. So the earlier
Right.
you come in, the less you pay. So if I came in at 12 noon, I paid $20 to work as long as I wanted. I could work till 2 a.m.
Right.
If I came in at 4 p.m., it was 60 and so on. So it went up pretty much $20 an hour as the night went on.
Right.
Would max out, they would stop taking dancers in Niagara Falls at 9 p.m. and 9 p.m. was $150 to pay to work for them.
Really?
So it got
Oh my gosh.
quite pricey.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
And not every night you're guaranteed to make money. As a VIP dancer, it's the luck of the draw. Sometimes you have very good customers and clients. Some nights you walk out with nothing.
Yep.
So it's a big gamble.
Huge gamble.
So I felt that when I was in Calgary, because I was only making $16 a dance.
What? Oh my God. Oh yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's like so incredibly little there. I remember when I had Rosie Skies on the show, and I was like, what is going on? Like, why is it so little? Like, hardly any money. Like, it's just it's wild.
Manitoba, you can make good money in. It's just air dances. So if that is your style of VIP dancing or floor work, I would highly suggest checking out Manitoba.
Okay.
Lipsticks is a great club to work at too.
Right.
And Winnipeg. So from Calgary, I just felt like I wasn't fitting in, and I called a club in Red Deer called Ecstatic.
Okay.
Dave, the manager there, and he was blown away that I wanted to go from Calgary to Red Deer to work. So he was just like, if you want to make the change from the big city to come out here to work, he's like, by all means. He's like, come talk to me. We open at 9 o'clock.
That's amazing.
I showed up at 8, thinking most clubs usually like let their dancers come in an hour before to get ready.
Totally.
Prep, take a look at the club if it's their first time. No, I had to sit in my car for an hour. They opened the doors for anyone at exactly 9 o'clock.
That's hilarious.
So I talked to him. It's a cashless system there.
Oh.
So basically, really unique, something I never saw, is I guess they do it over in Europe a lot more, is they have you on this computerized Excel sheet pretty much to simplify it.
Okay.
What you do is you give them your dancer name for the evening and your real name. And I had to show him my Ontario card. He didn't care about having an Alberta card since I was temporarily
Yeah.
there. He said he would make an exception. It's pretty much for the same reason as Ontario. They just want to make sure that you're cleared by the RCMP.
Right.
And when you are going for a dance in Red Deer or Alberta, you take them upstairs to the VIP room. It's no contact as well, so air dancing only. There's cameras in the VIP rooms
Okay.
at this particular club, and you would go in, sit down, and the bouncer or a person that was sitting at the desk watching the cameras just outside the VIP rooms would ask the customer how many dances he would like and what type of genre of music he would like.
Whoa.
So he would pick
Really?
his genre of music and he'd say, I want to go for 4 songs. So then you're dancing for 4 songs and it's being played by this person and they have you in a booth and they can see everything that's happening. And when you
Okay.
come out of the booth, they stop and the gentleman pays by debit or credit or cash to the person
What?
sitting at the desk. The person at the desk will calculate how many songs you have, put it in the system, and you do not get any money until the end of your shift. So at the end of
Whoa.
your shift, you go speak with the manager. In this case, this gentleman's name was Dave. And I would go to his office and he would hand me what I made at the end of the night in cash. And that was it.
I love that system. That is
So
so
it's
progressive.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was nice in that form because then there's no ATM lineups,
Yes.
like you're not worrying about anything and you know you're going to get paid. The other thing is too is I didn't have to worry for my safety of the fact, am I going to get paid? Am I going to do all this work and worry about the person not paying me at the
End
end?
of the night. Yeah.
Because they took care of that for me. And the other thing was too is there was sometimes they saw a customer I'd bring up and they said, hey, can you please pay before your dance begins?
That's incredible. I really like that system. Like, wow. In Red Deer,
Yeah.
of all places?
In Red Deer, Alberta, of all places.
What?
So,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
I love their club. Highly recommend their club as well. They're just from my personal experience, I still have Dave on contact, and he actually contacted me a few months ago when he was looking for girls to work, and he said, "Hey, would you like to come in and just work for a week or two before COVID happened?"
Wow.
So they go through a series of girls. Girls are freelancers out there.
Right.
They also hire for stage shows. The one unique thing I found working in the prairie provinces of Alberta to Manitoba was the fact that they don't put bills on stage. They throw quarters. So girls at the end of their
Oh.
stage shows walk around with magnets to pick up their tips. And
Wow.
it's just
That's so
like,
different.
that's so different.
That is so different.
So in BC, it's a little bit different as well.
Yeah, for sure.
There is I wasn't part of the system where I did stage shows, so I can't speak on that part, but I know there's a governing body that you go through, and it's an
Yes.
agency
Yes,
that
there is.
allows you to do stage shows. Clubs will also, after you've been there for a while, put you up every so often if you ask to go on stage, just in between the girls that are contracted for stage shows for an in-between show. And you do
Exactly.
2 songs here or there. When I moved to Vancouver and I was just doing VIP, I saw how amazing the stage show performances are out here. It's nothing like Ontario. In Ontario, you're forced to do a stage show. You get put up in a lineup
And a lineup.
of girls. Yeah,
Okay.
so when you walk in at the night, you give them your stage name and to the DJ, and the DJ will call you up uh, basically before for the next girl. So if say Tasha's on stage, he's like, with 2 songs left, because you're doing 3 songs on stage instead of 4. They'd be like, Tasha's on her second song, and 1 song after this will be Tiffany, and that gives you enough time. You'll hear it over the whole club, and that gives you enough time to get ready to go to the DJ booth and then hop on stage.
Oh.
So you're in order. The cheeky thing about this is girls would usually tip or pay the DJ out to skip them so they could keep working the floor and
Yeah.
not have to do stage show performances. So sometimes you would end up doing 20 stage shows instead of just 10
Oh.
because other girls were constantly skipping.
Weird.
In British Columbia, it's not like that.
No.
And what I loved was the fact that I could just keep doing what I was doing, and I didn't have to worry about it. Well,
Totally.
after seeing for a month and a half of how amazing all the stage shows were, I contacted you and I was like, I need to learn how to do some crazy moves. And
Yes.
that's how my stage show career started. I never
Amazing.
contacted the agency though.
Yeah.
I just did the in between shows for 2 songs sets between the assigned dancers for that day.
That's good. You know what? You're honestly not missing them. Missing a lot. I'm gonna have a whole episode on like corrupt agencies because I'm not a big fan of the agency here, and I'm probably not gonna be working again after this, so I can say whatever I want. But yeah, so that's how you got started. So you were all okay. That's like so cool. I'm so glad you shared so much detail with all of the clubs across Canada. That's super insightful. Thank you so much for that. I also wanted to talk about so you are now based in Vancouver. You are working your civilian job as a licensed electrician. How has that contrast been? What was the reception of your work here? Did you divulge that, hey, I am an exotic dancer as well? How did they receive that? We haven't talked about that yet. So, and you have a good story to tell about that.
Well, it started was when I was working as an electrician. We'll do jobs, and we're not allowed job site radios for the company I work for, for safety reasons. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of construction. You need to kind of be aware of your surroundings. My pretty much foreman or manager on site would allow us to listen to slow music or podcasts on our phone if we're working in certain rooms by ourselves. So I was working in a room by myself, just doing my thing, and I was listening to your podcast, actually.
That's amazing. Thank you.
During your COVID series.
Yes.
So I was sitting there listening to it about the COVID series, and my foreman came in and asked me, he's like, is it okay if I work in the same room as you? And I said, yeah, no problem. Put my mask on, and I asked if I could keep listening to my podcast. He was completely into it. He's like, yeah, it sounds really interesting. I started it from the beginning. We had conversations about it.
Cool.
And it came out that he is also a moonlighter, and he grew up in Whistler. And when he was just starting out as an electrician, your wage is not that great. It takes years before you get a good wage.
Right.
And so he was struggling because the cost of living out here in the Vancouver area is extortionate.
Yes.
And he was doing private parties as a male dancer to make ends meet.
Amazing.
So it started with that conversation, and because I felt so warmed when he opened up to me, and I love how liberal Vancouver is to begin with where Black Lives Matter to the LGBTQ community and all that stuff. So we started having conversations, and I opened up to him, and I said, this is really hard for me to say. I'm like, I don't know. Stop me if this makes you feel uncomfortable, but this is what I do in my personal time. And thank you so much for sharing. He stopped for a minute, and he said, he's like, can I give you a hug? This is a big deal. He's like, I'm comfortable as a male saying this because he says that in this line of work, he's not going to lose his job. He said, for you to come out and say all this to me is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then he asked me questions. He said, how did it feel when you lost your job in Ontario because of them finding out and stuff like that? So it just opened up a whole conversation just from one podcast, which I thought was amazing. And that's when I contacted you and I said, you know what, if one conversation can make this small of an impact, how big can we make this?
Totally.
And so I went home that night and told my partner, I was like, I have a huge weight off of my chest. I told one person at work today of what I do outside of my civilian job, and I feel so much lighter. And it took me, I've been dancing since 2016, and coming out to my parents was hard enough. They were the first people I came out to.
Okay.
And it was, well, I guess you tell your two closest friends usually as a girl.
Right.
And I told them, and one of them told my dad on Father's Day.
What?
So, yeah.
Holy
So
fuck.
I went over to my father's house on Father's Day. Was like, hey, happy Father's Day. A big night after work, because Father's Day is usually on Sunday, so I work
Yep.
Saturday. And he said, we need to sit down and talk.
Oh,
Your
God.
friend called me and told me this is what you're doing. Is this true?
What kind of friend is that?
So we're not
Jesus.
friends anymore.
Yeah,
And she
clearly.
was worried about my safety, and she was concerned. So I told my parents. It destroyed my relationship with my parents for at least 2 years. I
Oh,
finally have a
God.
strong relationship with them now. But it took a while to mend that relationship because I didn't come out to them first before
Right.
they found the information.
Yeah, they had to find out through your friends, which is,
Friend.
yeah, not cool.
Exactly. So that was a learning experience. And that's why I say when you're coming out to people, it's how you feel comfortable. So when you have the conversation, it's about how you feel. It's not about other people's feelings
Right.
because they're not the one in your shoes.
Exactly.
So when I told my higher up about it on the job site, I I felt relieved about it just since we shared a personal connection with it.
Right.
And so he said, he's like, do you mind talking about it to others? He kind of got a glimpse of it. And I said, no, as long as they don't judge me. That was my big thing. I said, I'm worried about my job. I love my job. I love what I do, but I like to be able to do both. And that was my concern. So I said, no one knows me here in Vancouver. I have a small group of friends. I'm still new here. No one's here to judge me yet. And that's the other reason why I moved to Vancouver. I moved here because of how liberal it was, but the fact that no one knew me. So I had a fresh start from
Right.
what I was getting judged at in Ontario in my civilian life.
Right. Right.
So
Okay.
when we had that conversation, I came home from work, told my partner, I was like, this is what happened today. I feel so good, all this stuff. And our group of friends knows what I do. And he said, he's like, that's amazing. He's like, I'm glad you finally feel confident enough to talk about it out here without shying away from everything. And so went back to work the next day. I threw on another one of your podcasts.
Yay.
I'm like, let's make this a conversation now. So I scrolled through them, like, let's pick one of my favorites. And I put it on. And he said, he's like, this, you know what? If he's like, if you feel comfortable enough listening to this, let's see how people feel when we're listening to it on the job site in our
Right.
small room. Because pretty much it's just me and one other person.
Right.
I had another coworker that came in, grabbed some stuff out of the room I was working in, and he's just like, that sounds really interesting. He's like, what is that podcast? I'd like to listen to it. Told him about it. I said, if you have any questions, I said, I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah.
We at lunchtime that day, we sat down. Me and my manager were still talking about what our conversation was next day, and the coworker that overheard the podcast started to ask both me and my manager questions. We came out and just said, this is what we do in our personal time. This is everything. He asked how we managed our lives, our personal lives. It got into a big conversation. From there, they were completely accepting about it, and they thought it was pretty amazing.
That's awesome.
We do. So I think it's different perspectives.
Yeah.
It does change person to person, but personally, it made me feel so liberated to be able to come out, and it felt like I wasn't carrying these bricks on my shoulders anymore.
Totally. It's like a weight, that weight is off of you. It's like a relief, right? So
yeah. And that's the other thing too. It goes to show that you can be a very strong worker in the civilian side, and you can also moonlight and be a strong worker in that too. Who says that you can't do multiple things? People multitask all the time.
Exactly.
You just have to be able to have a strong balance.
Right. The work-life balance is extremely, extremely important. And I mean, you are working a lot, but it's important to have these conversations again, as you said. And I'm really, really glad to hear that your colleagues and your boss were just so receptive in a positive way about what you do in your spare time. I'm so glad because, as you said, you already experienced the other side where things were not accepted. You were dismissed from your job. Like, I would never want you to go through that again. I don't want anyone to go through that. It's not a fun time. And no, and like, it's just, I'm just amazed. And I'm so glad that it went like a full 180 and you've had a positive experience here in Vancouver. Like, that makes me really, really happy to hear that. So thank you so much for sharing. Seriously.
Thank you for having me share this with everyone else.
Yeah, like, I mean, as you said, like, it really depends on the person's situation. It also depends on careers as well. Like, I feel it is very, very, very subjective in terms of like what type of career that you choose to do, what kind of jobs you do. I feel like if it's more of like a casual job or anything in F&B, hospitality, anything entrepreneurial, I think those aspects can be a lot more liberal and accepting and empathizing. But if it's
Yeah.
something in like a professional, like traditionally professional career, like law or like anything like that, like it might have some repercussions. But I mean, I don't believe it should, because I think whatever you do in your personal time shouldn't affect what you do in your day to day job. It's different parts of your brain. It's like completely unrelated. And
Exactly.
you know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't, again, what you said, like what you do in your personal time shouldn't really have to interfere with anything that you do professionally. So,
Yes.
yeah, so I'm really, really hoping that, again, with the podcast and with more stories like this about coming out, it would help to inspire other people to do so too, but also really gauge your audience, really look at who you're dealing with, what kind of conservative views that they might have, or even political views that can kind of give you like a big hint whether or not someone will be accepting or not. And just be careful, because it can also have those really negative repercussions as well. So you kind of, there's no right or wrong way, or there's no specific way of doing this correctly, but you just have to really, again, trust who you are, or like put trust in whoever you are going to be divulging this information to. And also just kind of like look at the situation from like a big picture point of view and kind of go from there. It's really hard. There's no guidebook for doing this. It really just varies for everyone. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to point out is it's a learning experience. So you're going off of when people criticize themselves and saying, I wish I would have known this. Well, you made that decision based on the data that you held at that moment in time. So you can't judge yourself from the past. You can only learn from it. At that moment in time, I'm like, well, this is what happened to me before. Why don't I choose my words carefully on how I'm coming out and what I say and everything like that? I waited for them to make a discussion, and we used a podcast and someone else's discussion to start the conversation.
Right.
I gauged it on how I felt at that moment, the data that I had, and I was very careful about it. And then it slowly came out of, oh, this is my past, this is what happened, I've been to here, here, and here dancing, it's pretty amazing. And it kept going further.
Right.
Now, if there's backlash with what happened from that, I can only use that, add it to my book, and write it down and say, okay, this is what to do next time. And you can't beat yourself up on it. You did what felt right to you.
Right. Awesome. Well, this is really, really, really great advice. Again, I really hope this can inspire listeners too, or anyone else that's kind of in a similar situation. It's really, really great tips. Thank you so much, Caitlyn / Tiffany, for sharing.
And if anyone does ever want to reach out, I know for sure I'm sure Steph says the same way in her podcast too. Just like reach out to us. We'd love to have that conversation with you too. It's hard, and I found the best way to gain a perspective on something was to ask other people in the field. So asking other sex workers advice and what happened to them, and just kind of going and formulating an opinion of your own, and then make a decision.
Right.
Sometimes you just have that conversation with someone else.
Right. So yeah, don't be afraid to slide into those DMs, guys. But I guess with that, we just have a couple questions here for the latter end of the show. But if you want to kind of move into that, we can. Yeah, the first question is, which is a really broad question, are you still in sex work?
I am. So currently right now with the clubs being closed due to COVID, they are starting to reopen, but they're only reopening for stage show performances in BC.
Right.
I'm not a stage show performer. I am strictly just VIP and floor work. So currently I am not working, but I will be going back to work as soon as the VIP industry opens up.
Right.
I don't know if I'll do it right away. I think I might gauge it and dip my toe in to see how the rules are.
Yeah.
Safety measures with masks and everything like that, and go from there. But I will be going back to work. I do miss it.
Awesome. I miss work too. Why did you decide to keep both of your jobs, and what is the appeal for doing so?
I kept both of my jobs because I enjoy both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to pursue a career in something that made me happy, and I like working with my hands. I also like how much I learn every single day. Being an electrician, you're always learning something new.
Right.
That being said, I like the freedom and the sexuality, the conversations, the music, the nightlife, and everything that comes with dancing. So I couldn't make a decision, and because I couldn't make a decision, I decided to do both.
That's totally valid.
I figured you hurt yourself if you say no to one and not the other, so let's just merge the two.
Just do it all. Why not? Get that bank.
Exactly.
But you know what? That's all the questions that came in. But before I let you go, where can we find you? If we can find you, since you don't have social for your dancer account.
If you have any questions, you can message me in my DMs on my personal social media account on Instagram, which is Caitlyn Marie on Instagram. I am selective. I will say this. I'm very selective on who I add. It is my personal life.
Yes.
And but if you have any questions about things, you're more than welcome to reach out. I always answer everything. I can say sometimes it takes me 2 to 3 business days, as if I have a busy day at work. I sometimes don't check my social media, but I promise I will get back to you. And we can go from there. And usually I do add quite a few people if you seem normal and stuff like that, but when it comes to just randoms because you want to check out what my personal life is, I keep that private just for myself. But you can find me there. I'm always open to talk, and we can start the conversation.
Absolutely. And you know what? If you guys can also reach out to me as well, and I could always connect you with Caitlyn as well. So that option's also available. But again, pretty much just slide in the DMs. We always answer, and we love to start this conversation, have this discussion, open this conversation up. It's really important that we do so. It's really significant. And yeah, and I'm just really glad we got to do this episode. You're the perfect person for this topic. Again, having experienced both sides. So thank you again, Caitlyn / Tiffany Hart, Tiffany of Hearts, for coming on the show. It was amazing. And guys, don't forget to like, rate, review, and subscribe. It's Strip by Sia on all podcast platforms out there, and also my personal, which you can also slide the DMs. It's Sia Steph on IG, and everywhere else. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this week. And there will be another episode for season 2 coming out next week. Guys, stay tuned, and we'll see you guys later. Bye. You're listening to Strip by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia, artwork by Maria Bellandarama, music by Ted D, and photography by Ian Dabern.